For countless eons, the forces of entropy have dueled against the powers of change. Both sides have been locked in a horrible rivalry since before time immemorial. Corrupted by the revolting powers of Nurgle, the warriors of the Death God have become the rotting epitome of disease, death, and decay. Rivaling them are the sorcerers of the Thousand Suns, whose gifts from the god of magic have tainted their minds in ways known only to Tzeentch himself. Now on a barren wasteland, the minions of both change and entropy prepare for yet another battle in their master's honor. In today's battle report, we'll see the disgusting warriors of the Death God go head-to-head against the abominable cultists of the Thousand Suns, to see who will win glory for their masters, and who will die trying.
Hey everyone, Brett here playing Warp Coven. Today I'm going to be bringing a pretty standard team. The first of the three sorcerers that you see here, the one with the wings on his back, is going to have the immaterial flight boon, giving him fly. He's also going to have the tempiric spell set. Second sorcerer you're going to see with that long staff and the flames on his back is going to be my leader. He's going to have the empiric ward, giving him a 4-up invulnerable save, and he'll also have the destiny spell set. The last sorcerer with the warp flame pistol is going to have the incorporeal sight boon, giving his pistol lethal 5-up and no cover, and he is also going to have the tempiric spell set. The equipment for my team is going to be an arcane robe on each of the sorcerers to help keep him alive a little bit longer, a high capacity mag on my icon bear to give him more reliable shooting, and gilded horns on the normal Zangor fighter to make him a little bit more scary in melee combat.
Hello everybody, my name is Ethan and I will be bringing Death Guard to today's battle report. I'm choosing to take just 6 Plague Marines, starting with my Marine Champion armed with a Plasma Pistol and Power Claw, my Icon Bearer with his Icon and a Bolt Gun, and my Heavy Gunner with a Light Launcher. And lastly we have my Plague Marine Gunner armed with a Plasma Gun, and just 2 Plague Marine Warriors, both armed with bolt guns. And of course everybody on my Plague Marine team comes equipped with Plague Knives. For the Death Guard equipment, we start with the Plague Bell, equipped by the leader, to get some extra movement on everybody. Then we go to Virulent Rounds, which I have on my warrior, one of my warriors, and my Icon Bearer. My Heavy Gunner has a Blight Grenade, and one of my warriors has a Crack Grenade, the one who does not have Virulent Rounds. For today's battle report, we will be playing Escalating Hostilities, Mission 2.1 from the Critical Operations Pack. At the time, the new mission structure had not come out yet, so we were still playing with these. Mission rules are as follows. At the end of the second and third initiative phases, starting with the player who has initiative, each player removes 1 objective marker that is closest to their drop zone. At the end of the first and second turning point, for each objective marker friendly operatives control, they score a VP. And lastly, at the end of the third and fourth turning point, for each objective that a friendly operative controls, you score 2 VPs. Myself with Death Guard will be on the left side of the screen, while Brett with his Warp Coven will be on the right.
Ethan and I have already determined that I will be the defender for this game, and I have decided to take the right-hand side of the board. I've used my barricades to provide just a little bit extra cover on one of these points, and a little bit more cover in my drop zone. We've picked our attack ops at this point, and we have our 3 CP on the board. We then move into the setting up operatives phase. I am going for a simple setup with my Zangors on the one side of the board. I'm going to look to push them up and maybe get some action in with them in the later turning points of the game. And then on the opposite side of the board, I have my leader setup, another sorcerer, and my Soul Reaper cannon, and my Icon Bearer.
With only 6 operatives, there was really my main goal of having 2 teams of 3 that are going to be dividing and conquering up the board. And it really came down to just kind of how I wanted to divide them up. I definitely wanted to keep the Plasma by some heavy cover. With him also being my headhunter, I wanted to make sure that he can stay alive. and he could do his move, shoot, dash, maneuver, at least a couple turns, as long as he didn't get one shot or something like that. Setting my icon bearer with him just for added defense, just in case. And then I was thinking about using my leader's plague bell and wanted to make sure that he was within 6 inches of basically everybody, if at all possible. So trying to really centrally locate him, even if it does stunt his movement later on, it'll at least give everyone else a chance here at the beginning to get something a little bit better. In the process, I'm also just splitting up one warrior on each side, and I put my heavy gunner up towards the top there just so that he's able to get a better view of the board, knowing that movement's going to be a little hard to get him on the vantage point right away.
Next, we're on to the scouting step. Ethan and I both choose recon for a free dash, and I use mine to move my icon bearer forward underneath the building. Ethan uses his to move his leader up behind the barricade.
Hey everyone, this is Ethan, taking the Death Guard into this game against Brett's Warp Coven. There's a couple things that I knew I needed to watch out for, especially things like his blast. So, looking at cards, there was two decisions that really were impactful. The first one between Execution, Rob, and Ransack. I figured that Execution is going to be slightly better, just because he has more units than I do. More often, a lot of the Death Guard are tankier, so they don't die as fast. And then between Challenge and Headhunter, I really don't like Challenge, especially against Brett, because he will just maneuver me out of the board with more units. So I decided to pick Headhunter for this, at least get the one VP for getting that attack up. So for setting them all up, I took all Conceal. It was something a little risky. I knew I couldn't get around his vantage points and the blast he was going to have on both of his sorcerers. And I really needed a turn to spread out all my units with the Plague Bell. So I decided that I was just going to end up taking them, take the initial cover save, and then dash as many of my guys out as I could. And I also didn't pick any ploys, because they're all combat based with Death Guard.
Hey everybody, I'm Brett. I'm going to be playing Warp Coven today against Ethan's Death Guard. I just want to talk a little bit about my setup. I saw Ethan went pretty passive on a lot of his stuff, a lot of conceal orders. So I'm just going to take this as an opportunity to move up the board, try to do a little bit of damage from the vantage points with whatever spells that I can. I'm going to move up my Zangors, get them ready for a potential GA2 in the next turning point to maybe do some damage to one of his guys. Soul Reaper Cannon, I'm just going to get into a position for the next turning point. Not much is going to happen now. I chose a lot of tac ops, a lot of my faction tac ops, which are very dependent on Ethan choosing things for me. So we'll see how that plays out. A worst case scenario, fortunately I do have a tactical ploy to let me switch one of my tac ops, so I can always fall back on that. Otherwise, the plan is to just get into a better position for this first turning point. I'm going to try to stay far enough away from any potential charges, and hopefully just mitigate damage in the second turning point and dish out what I can now. So that's my whole setup for now. We'll see if I can actually get some chip damage in this first turning point. Next up, we head into the first turning point and the strategic phase. Neither Ethan or I play any strategic ploys, and we move into the target reveal step. Ethan chooses not to reveal any tac ops, and I go ahead and reveal all three of mine. My first one is Grand Plan, which has Ethan choose one of his operatives, and if I incapacitate them at any point, I'll gain a VP. The second part of the tac op requires me to capture a point along the midline or in Ethan's side of the board that he chooses. Since he can't choose any point that can be removed, he's forced to pick one in the middle of the map and chooses the one on the bottom half. Next, I reveal Central Control and another faction tac op, Scry Secret. Ethan chooses his heavy gunner to be the target of Grand Plan and Scry Secret.
Firstly, I'm activating my leader, so that way I can use his Plague Bell to give as many of my Nurgle boys extra movement as possible, and then move him up to the pipe, so that way in later turning points he's able to get some more offensive pressure.
I I attempt to start strong by using my sorcerer with fly to get up on a vantage point and cast Flux Blast into the 3 grouped operatives. Flux Blast profile is 4 hitting on 3s with blast of 2 inches and rending. For my first roll on the initial target, I only score 2 normal hits, and they're both safe. The second attack goes into the Icon Bearer, and I score 2 crits in 2 hits, a much better roll. Ethan's able to save a crit in 2 hits, and after Disgustingly Resilient, only 3 wounds go through. The last attack goes into the Plasma Gunner, and I score 2 crits. Ethan manages to save 1, and with Disgustingly Resilient, only 2 damage goes through. Finally, I spend a CP on a tactical ploy called Capricious Plan to change his order back to Conceal, so that way I can avoid getting shot back.
I decide to move one of my warriors up onto the point closest to me and put him against the building so that way he's able to contest the middle points later on.
And in preparation for the next turning point, I'm going to move my Soul Reaper cannon up onto the vantage point.
Following a very similar move to my previous turn, I take my warrior and I move him up to the closest point and tuck him next to this pipe.
I will copy Ethan's move by measuring out a move for my Icon Bearer and moving him onto the point on the other side of the building, just within cover on the other side.
I then decide to also move my Heavy Gunner just up to the barricade I put by the closer point.
Ethan's doing a little bit more moving than I would like him to, so I'm going to use my Sorcerer with the Warp Flame Pistol to cast Ephemeral Instability and take away a circle from his dash, making it only 1 inch. Next, I'm going to look and measure out where a move and a dash can get this Sorcerer, but ultimately, I'm just going to move him a little bit shorter and keep him behind the heavy cover.
I move up my Icon Bearer and use his Icon of Decay to give himself and the warrior close to him a buff.
I will also do a simple move with my leader and move and dash him behind the building.
Out of fear that I'm going to lose my Plasma Gunner early, I decide to move him just behind some heavy cover, that way he'll be able to pop out in later turning points.
These last 2 activations are going to be nice and simple. I'm just going to move the Zangor Warrior up as far as I can. And then I'm going to move the Zangor Champion up onto that point to control it.
And that will wrap up the first turning point, rather uneventful, but both Brett and I are claiming the closest 2 points to each side, to score us both 2 primary points. And then rolling for initiative for the second turning point, I barely beat Brett by 1.
Alright, moving into turning point 2 here, I did get initiative. I wanted to be focusing up moving 3 by 3. I do have some options for some vantage points, but he has more units than I do, so it might be more beneficial for me to keep them on the ground and contesting those points, even though he will have some better melee than I will. I'm going to probably be moving some non-important units first, hoping that he gives me kind of a shot at maybe one of his sorcerers to get some big damage and injure one of them. That would be a priority for this round, to try to nerf some of that. Lastly, I took some damage. I didn't take a whole lot of damage. I did think it was going to be worse, but you know, a couple damage on the Icon Bear, a couple damage on the Plasma, I can deal with. So that's what we're looking at.
Alright, going into turning point 2, I lost the initiative, so I might be losing a model here in the beginning. We're not sure. I'm at least going to take some sort of fire. Depends on what he uses first. But my plan to start is going to be to focus on that left flank with my Zangors. I'm going to hope I can move them up and get a chance to use them. I won't feel too bad if I lose them, if I can put in some damage on one of his guys. And then, secondly, the Soul Reaper Cannon is now in a better position. That's my main shooting force, so I'm going to try to use that to take somebody out. I'm going to look to maybe get some points for that faction tac op for taking out his heavy gunner. So that's going to be the majority of my strategy. I'm just going to try to mitigate loss and keep moving up the board to get those points. In the beginning of turning point 2, Ethan is going to elect to use malicious volleys, and I am going to choose to use exalted Astartes. Both of us choose to remove the objectives on the bottom half of the board.
Because Brett has a lot of his units still in conceal, I decide to use the vantage point closest to my gunner and take a bolt gun shot towards the sorcerer. A bolt gun being nothing too special, this is just 4s on 3s, and I get 2 hits and a crit. Brett will retain his 1 for cover, and then he saves 2 normals, blocking both a crit and hit from me, just taking 3 damage.
Alright, time for my heavy gunner to make his debut. My Soul Reaper cannon is going to take a shot down into Ethan's heavy gunner. The Soul Reaper cannon's profile is 6 attacks, hitting on 3, with AP 1. The first shot from the Soul Reaper cannon gets 2 crits and 2 hits. With Ethan retaining 1 from cover, he rolls a fail, and then CP rerolls into a crit save. This should be 7 damage going through total, but with Disgustingly Resilient, only 5 will go through. Now using the other 2 APL that he has from being within 6 inches of a sorcerer, he's going to shoot again into the same target. This time I score 5 regular hits. Ethan's able to save 2, and 9 damage goes through. With Disgustingly Resilient, 7 damage goes through, just enough to take him out. That round of very successful shooting will score me the first point from Grand Plan from taking out Ethan's chosen operative.
Taking some crazy damage from Brett's heavy gunner, I end up losing my own, but I decide to retaliate with my plasma gunner instead. See how he likes this. With the plasma gunner, I do my 4s on 3s, and of course I supercharge it, and end up rolling a 1, which I decide to hesitate a little bit and spend the CP anyways. Luckily, I end up rolling it into a crit anyways. To get around my AP2, Brett decides to use his invul save and rolls 1 crit and 2 fails. Which then he also decides to CP reroll 1 into another fail, meaning that the heavy gunner is going to take 16 damage total. Getting that kill with my plasma gunner will reveal my deadly marksman, and of course I'm just going to slide him right back where he was.
Alright, with the death of my Soul Reaper cannon, I am going to use my Icon Bearer. I'm going to traverse him over the barricade, get onto this other point, and then I'm going to shoot twice up into the warrior up on top of the vantage point. The Icon Bearer has an Infernal Bolt Gun, which is going to be 4 attacks, hitting on 3s with AP 1 and Ceaseless from the High Capacity Mag. I managed to score 1 crit and 2 hits. Ethan is only able to save the 1 for cover, and 7 damage will go through, which he quickly turns into 5 damage. For the second round of shooting, it's going to be the same profile, and this time I'm able to score 2 crits and 1 hit. Ethan takes 1 for cover, and he luckily rolls a crit save. With only 4 damage going through, Ethan's actually unable to save any of these with Disgustingly Resilient, and that'll be a total of 9 damage from both attacks.
As my warrior is continuing to get pelted by Brett's gunfire, I decide to move up my champion and meet him with my other plasma. My champion, having the even better plasma profile, 4s on 2s, I land 3 hits and a crit. Brett again is only able to save one of my plasma hits with his invul save, taking another 16 damage, which will remove his Rubric Marine from the battlefield.
Alright, so I've taken my second loss this turning point to plasma, so I need to try and get some kills. I'm going to move my leader out onto this point behind the barricade and Doombolt up into that weakened warrior. Doombolt is going to be 4 attacks on 3s, lethal 5 up, and mortal wounds 2. I do score a 5 and another crit, so that's going to be 4 mortal wounds right away. Ethan's going to roll for those right away to see if he can even survive. And he's unable to save any of them, so that's going to take out the warrior. Finally, I'm just going to dash the leader over a little bit to try and get a little bit more cover.
Seeing an opportunity to use my icon bearer, I bear his icon again, and I start using those malicious volleys I paid for. Shooting at his leader here, we check to see if he's going to get cover from this angle, and after a little bit of deliberation, we decide that he would not get cover. Standard bolt gun fires, 4s on 3s. I land 2 of them, thinking I'm not going to get a whole lot of damage through, but man, is it my lucky day of Brett rolling 3 1s. Taking 6 damage, I decide to shoot at him again, see if I can pick off that early kill for Headhunter. I get 3 hits. Alas, Brett also gets 2 saves, meaning that his leader will be left with 4 health there.
Alright, I lost a little more wounds there than I would have liked to, but it's okay. I've got my other sorcerer in the back who's fully prepared to support my leader. I'm just going to dash and move him forward into some cover. And then I'm going to cast Temporal Manipulation on my leader to heal him for 2d3. And I'm going to be healing him for a total of 4 health, which puts him back up to a total of 8. Then I'm just going to make sure I have this sorcerer in a conceal order, and that'll be my turn.
And of course, Brett had to heal, but I really need his leader dead here, so I take another couple rounds of malicious volleys. I'm pretty happy with the first roll, a crit and 2 hits, but he ends up blocking the crit and one of those hits. My second roll looking very similar to the first, with a crit and 2 hits here. I hesitate a little bit, and I really need his leader dead here, so I decide to CP reroll my 1 fail into a regular hit. And of course, Brett had to go and save the crit and 2 of those hits, meaning his leader's down to 2, if only he didn't heal.
So at this point, my leader probably shouldn't be alive. But I'm going to use my Flying Sorcerer to move down onto that forward point, and then cast Flux Blast into the warrior who just shot at my leader. From the angle that I'm shooting from, the warrior actually will not get cover, so that's going to be a little bit better for me. I get a pretty good roll here. With Rending kicking in, I get 2 crits and 2 hits. Ethan's defense saves are pretty good here. He's able to save a crit and a hit, meaning only 7 damage will be going through. With his Disgustingly Resilient, he's able to save 2, and then with a couple rerolls from the Icon Bearer's ability, he's able to save a 3rd. Only 4 damage goes through.
And at this point, I'm on Overwatch, so I again try to kill his leader with my warrior. This time hitting on 4s due to Overwatch. I have a terrible roll, and of course, Brett saves it all.
Yet again, my leader survived another shot. Now, in order to keep Ethan from getting another Overwatch action, I'm going to spend my last CP for Mutant Herd to give my 2 Zangors within 3 inches GA2. I'm going to use this to move my normal Zangor warrior up into the open, hopefully giving Ethan another thing to shoot at other than my leader. And then my Zangor champion is going to move a little bit behind cover onto that 3rd point. That will also mark the end of the second turning point. I am going to score 3 points for holding 3 objectives. Ethan will score 1. And I am also going to score my 2nd point from Grand Plan for holding that point along the middle. as well as central control.
Feeling some of the heat here, we go to roll for the third turning point, and again, I beat Brett, which means I'll get to go first.
Alright, Death Guard going into turning point 3 here. Feeling rough. Definitely falling behind as I do these one-by-one trades. Luckily, took out his heavy gunner. Almost got his leader. Was going for that headhunter. 4 shots with malicious volleys was not enough. And then he got that heal. Very close. Because I got initiative here, I would love to use malicious volleys with my last CP to target down his leader and kill him, just to get him off the board and prevent a heal. But because he's holding these 2 points, I need to start dealing with these Zangors and getting into some melee combat. So I'm going to end up taking Contagion, hoping that with my 1 bolter shot I can take out that leader and move up for some damage.
Alright, so going into the third turning point, I lost a lot of resources in that last one. I was fortunately able to use the Soul Reaper Cannon to get a VP from Grand Plan and mitigate some damage by taking out his heavy gunner before he could activate. But now I've lost my Soul Reaper Cannon, I lost my Icon Bearer, and now my leader is at 2 health. It's likely I'm going to lose him in the beginning since I lost the initiative. Again, I'll be very lucky if he survives. So going into this third turning point, I think it's going to come down to figuring out who to activate first. I need to get more damage in and just maintain control of those center points. Right now I'm sitting good on the objectives, but I think a lot could change in this next turning point.
Starting off turning point 3, I look at the board and I see those Zangors coming up, and I know that I cannot take malicious volleys again, and I decide to take Contagion instead, which will help me when those Zangors start to get pretty close. Using my initiative, and before Brett's leader can run away, I shoot him for the 6th time. Because I wasn't able to take malicious volleys again, this is literally my last chance. And hitting with a crit and a normal hit, I see that Brett rolls only 2 normal saves, meaning that 1 will go through if he does not use his last CP here. Using his last CP, he re-rolls into a save, meaning that his leader will live another day. To round out the rest of my warrior's turn, I just move him up to the point.
So I've been way too lucky up to this point with keeping my leader alive, so I'm just going to try to use him and get him out of the way. So I'm just going to dash him back just a little bit to get a better line of sight on Ethan's leader. I'm going to cast Doombolt into him, and then I'm going to run away. I'm looking for 3s for Doombolt to hit, and I get 2 crits and 1 hit. Ethan's going to roll for the mortal wounds at Disgustingly Resilient right away, and he manages to turn it into 2 damage. He then rolls his defense saves, and he saves a crit and a hit. Another 3 damage will go through, until he turns it into 0 damage. And then I'm going to use my Sorcerer's move to get him on the other side of that building so I can't get shot back.
Brett's cowardly leader decides to run back, so I decide I might as well use my leader to take out perhaps another full sorcerer. Using my leader's plasma with AP2 and hot, I end up rolling 1 hot, which I don't have any CP, so I decide to take. Luckily, with Disgustingly Resilient, I only take 1. Brett, with his Invol 5 up, rolls a much-needed triple save.
I'm feeling pretty lucky now, so I'm going to charge my Zangor Fighter into Ethan's Icon Bearer and fight. Because of Ethan's ploy, I'm now hitting on 5s, but my Zangor has Relentless. With Relentless, I'm actually able to pull off 3 crits. Meanwhile, Ethan is only able to get a crit and a hit. I think about this for a moment, and I decide to hit for 5 damage. Ethan's going to turn that into 4 damage with Disgustingly Resilient. and then he's going to strike me for 5 damage, which will put my Zangor down to 3 health. Then I choose to parry with my crit, and then hit for another 5 damage. After his disgustingly resilient rolls, this puts his Icon Bearer down to 2 health.
Seeing my contagion ploy finally come into play, we both end up taking a pretty good chunk out of each other. Luckily, with a regular fight here, I only need to hit him once for Zangor to die. After my Icon Bearer takes out that Zangor with his Plague Knife, I decide to do a little bit of measuring and see if I can get him close enough to that point for him to be on it, and for me to start taking some damage on that Zangor before he starts to attack me. With some regular bolt gunfire here, I end up landing 2 hits, and Brett, using his Zangor's lethal 5-up, ends up saving one of those, meaning he'll take 3 damage.
I've been given a chance to use the Zangor Champion's Savage Assault ability and fight twice, so I'm going to charge into engagement range of both Plague Marines on the point. Firstly, I'm going to choose to fight the Icon Bearer, who's at 2 health. With Ethan's injury ploy, my champion is now hitting on 4s with lethal 5-up and brutal. I get a pretty poor roll, but that 5 is going to turn into a crit. Ethan gets a crit and a hit, and I'm just going to hope that my 1 crit can take him out. I hit for 5 damage, and luckily enough goes through to take out the first Marine. And then over to fighting the second Marine, I get a slightly better roll with 1 crit and 1 normal hit. Ethan gets a pretty good roll here, and he gets 3 regular hits. I'm definitely going to lose my champion here. Before that can happen though, I'm at least going to hit his warrior for 5 damage, which is disgustingly resilient, will turn into 4 damage. Now luckily Ethan can't parry me out because I have the brutal special rule and he has no crits. However, he's going to hit me for 3 damage, and then I'm going to use my final hit to hit him for 4. And unfortunately that turns into 2 damage, and then the Plague Marine's going to take out the Zangor champion.
Barely surviving that fight against the Zangors, I end up using my plasma finally to shoot his flying sorcerer, who's taking a second source of plasma this turn. With my plasma gunner's slow move, I'm able to get him just to the right angle where he's not able to get a cover save. And rolling 4s on 3s here, I get 3 hits, AP2 hot. Brett, of course, is going to use his invul save like regular, and ends up saving a crit and a hit there.
After another lucky and vulnerable save, I'm just going to do a little bit of measuring to make sure I can charge after shooting, and then I'm going to shoot back into the plasma gunner with a flux blast. I get a pretty average roll and only get 3 regular hits. Ethan takes the 1 for cover, and then he's able to save the other 2, no damage goes through. Next, using Fly, I'm going to charge over into that other injured warrior on the point and fight. Using the Sorcerer's Kopesh, and with Ethan's Strategic Ploy in play, this is going to be 4 attacks hitting on 4s with lethal 5-up and relentless. I get a really good roll here, end up with 3 crits and a normal hit, and Ethan completely whiffs his roll. So that would send a total of 22 damage through. Ethan doesn't bother rolling for that because he's only got 2 health left anyways.
After that monstrous hit from Brett's Sorcerer, I'm left in Overwatch trying to see if I even have a shot. After some deliberation and some measurements, we find that although I'm able to see one side, I'm not able to see both sides of that Sorcerer's base, so I won't have a valid shot, leaving Brett to carry on with his turn.
For my last activation of the turning point, I'm going to move my Sorcerer onto the points. And then I'm going to use his Warp Flame Pistol to shoot into Ethan's leader. Because of the boon, this is going to be 5 attacks hitting on 2, AP1 with lethal 5-up and no cover. I actually dropped 2 of the hits here, but I do get 2 crits and 1 hit. He does manage to save a crit and a hit, meaning only 4 damage is going to go through, which he then knocks down to 3 damage. Finally, this sorcerer is going to cast Temporal Manipulation on himself to heal. He heals 3 back, putting him back up to full health. After a very bloody third turning point, I'm going to gain 4 VP from the primary objective, while Ethan will not get any. I'm also going to score 1 more VP from central control. We'll both gain 1 CP and then roll off for initiative. Ethan rolls a 3 and I roll a 4, meaning I'll finally get initiative in the 4th turning point. Alright, I'm feeling pretty good going into the last turning point. I've got a nice healthy lead on VPs. I had some great invulnerable saves that kept my sorcerers alive. I think I saved like 5 hits with my 5-up invul, which is incredible. I am going up against his last 2 operatives, which both have plasma. So now I have to figure out which one I'm going to target first, since I actually won initiative for once. And then I got to figure out how I'm going to proceed from there. So that's the current dilemma. I've got 1 CP. I'm planning on using that to swap my last tac op, that Scry Secret one, which I kind of negated for myself in the beginning. I'm going to try to switch that, see if I can get that banner planted in his drop zone to just max out on VPs as much as I can. So, wish me luck. Okay, Death Guard turning point 4 here. It was a huge mistake to move my plasma just a tiny bit over, when he definitely should have been fully watching that point, because he's going to move a guy there. I just didn't think about the obscuring cover line there. The game is basically over. My cards are not going to get me enough points to counteract the points that he got from this last turning point, getting both of the objectives. I might as well take Contagion to Plasma and possibly charge with my leader if he stays on that point. Although I foresee him with initiative shooting my leader and probably healing first. So we'll see if I can take him out with me. And then I have Plasma, so I might as well just try to kill as many units as possible. To start the turning point off, I'm going to do a little bit of measuring to see how far up my sorcerer can move. And then I'm just going to shoot into his leader with the Warp Flame Pistol. This time I get 1 crit and 3 hits. Ethan is only able to save 1 of those normal hits, so 8 damage will go through. His disgustingly resilient save only saves him 1 of those damage, and just enough will go through to incapacitate his leader. Next, I'm going to spend my last CP on a tactical ploy called Schemes of Change. I technically should have done this when I activated the operative, but it wouldn't have changed anything even if I didn't incapacitate his leader. I'm going to swap out Scry Secret for a random tac op that can still be revealed. At this point in the game, only 2 tac ops left in my deck can actually be selected. After drawing a couple cards, I pick most of the cards that can't be revealed anymore. Finally, I do pick a card that can be revealed and was the one that I wanted. I reveal Plant Banner and I nominate my sorcerer who just shot to be the banner carrier. I then move and dash him over the pipe, just within a pentagon of Ethan's drop zone, and drop the banner.
With my leader just barely biting the dust and me knowing that this battle is easily over, my gunner runs up with no fear and points his plasma gun right in the sorcerer's face. With a colossal whiff on AP2, I only get the 1 crit and some hot. My disgustingly resilience also fails me. I get 0 saves, taking all 3 of that damage, along with Brett's roll, which easily blocks it, meaning I basically just shot myself.
At this point, all I need to do is make sure my sorcerer doesn't get killed by the plasma gunner. So we're just going to shoot with Flux Blast into him first. All I get is a single crit. Ethan easily saves that crit, and then I charge into engagement range and fight. With the Kopesh and Contagion up, this is going to be 4 attacks looking for 4s, with Lethal 5 up and Relentless. I land 3 crits, while Ethan lands 2 regular hits. I start the combat off by hitting for 6 damage, which Ethan then turns into 5 damage. He then strikes back for 3, and I'll hit him another time for another 6. And that's going to put enough damage through to incapacitate the plasma gunner. To finish off the game, my very injured leader is going to dash out from the building and then traverse over the barricade to recontrol that point. I'll score 4 primary VPs and 2 more VPs from Plant Banner.
In the end, the Resilient Death Guard were no match for the magical Warp Coven, with 3 primary VPs to Warp Coven's 12, 0 secondary VPs to Warp Coven's 6, and Warp Coven being the only team with models left with 3 out of 7, with a game summary total of 3 to 18.
All right, welcome to the post-game brief. I'm here with Ethan. Just finished up our game. Ended up final being 18-3. Very good game for me. We're just going to share some thoughts about the overall game, how we felt, maybe some things we were thinking. If you made it this far, thank you for watching. Hopefully we'll have more coming soon. So yeah. Ethan, what did you think?
Well, yeah, so I guess from the start, like I knew playing against Warp Coven before with Death Guard that it was not going to be easy. Your guys have very good shooting, and they have some, you can change your concealment and stuff like that. You can change your cards. You can give yourself APL. Like, you have a lot of options to counter, like, anything that one of my 6 units does. So I knew I had to get some good injuries, at least, on some of his sorcerers and his heavy gunner. So taking the first turn to put everything in conceal, knowing that I was going to take some blast, but being able to take a turn to move up to these points and not, move and lose a bunch of units right away. Unfortunately, did lose my heavy gunner to your heavy gunner, and then made a trade back with plasma. And then it kind of just seemed like some back and forth trading as you shot my guys there.
Definitely. I think in the first turning point was pretty uneventful.
Yeah.
The second one, I think, kind of set the stage. I don't think too much was decided there. I think, like you said, some gunners died, but it wasn't huge. Stuff was set up, but then I think that third turning point is kind of when things switched in my favor. But,
second turning point, you already had some guys. You had the Zangors moving up.
We were up, yeah.
You had some guys on both sides moving up a little bit faster than I was able to, picking off some guys. So then, yes, by third turning point, you had both of the points pretty handedly, because I didn't have enough guys, even with APL, to get onto the points. I think it would have been rough. But your leader, end of second turning point, that was eventful.
Yes.
Taking the malicious volleys, 4 bolter shots. The first 2, then he healed.
Yep.
And then
I don't even remember what he healed. I think it wasn't
4.
much. It was 4. Okay.
But it was enough that my other guy was not able to kill him. Because he hung on with 2.
And that was even with me not having cover too.
Yes, that was no cover.
There was some whiffs in your shooting.
Yes.
And I think I had to CP, and I think that was the beginning of the third. But I had to use a CP, I believe. I think it was beginning of the third. I had to CP to save that last hit.
You did.
Because that would have killed him.
Yeah, you rolled a 3.
Purely luck.
So barely.
Yeah, it was crazy.
Yeah, and then you moved him back. Obviously, safest play. I had Headhunter. And you really needed those 2 points. And then I would have gotten Execution there as well, which would have been awesome. I had Deadly Marksman. I got the first one, and then whiffed on the other 2 plasma shots.
Well, fortunately for me, I had a lot of really good invulnerable saves. Yes. I think this the one, my flying sorcerer saved. He saved. I think throughout the whole game, he saved 2 crits and
3 normal ones.
4. I think it was 4.
4.
I think so. With a 5-up invul.
It was
none
3.
of those were cover.
It was 3.
Was
3
it?
5s, yeah.
So that's insane. First off, I mean, that wasn't. I was expecting the leader. I put the 4-up invul on him because I knew you'd have 2 sources of plasma and then the launcher, which I believe has AP1.
It has AP1. It does.
So yeah. I put that on him to be more defensive. He didn't even take any of those shots.
Yeah.
The other dude did, and he ended up saving more. So I'll take it. The
Right.
dice were just in my favor with that one, but
Yeah. Yeah, it came down to numbers. And then at
Really
the
did.
end, I was just like, I have both plasma, super rare. Usually
Yes.
plasma gets targeted.
Yep.
So I was like, I'll get contagion. If Brett whiffs on his shot, maybe he'll stay on the point and I can plasma and then charge with the power power claw.
Mhm.
Obviously, you did completely different than what I wanted. You shot him, you killed him exactly.
which I wasn't expecting.
Right, I
really
wasn't
wasn't.
expecting either. And then moved and then swapped your card and got perfect on that.
Which that's something alone I gotta talk about. I don't know how well known this is, but Warp Coven players, okay? That's schemes have changed.
Yeah.
It's like super situational, but if you wait until that fourth turning point and you get somebody up the board, you schemes have changed on attack op because I had Scry Secret on you, and you put that, so I had to kill your heavy gunner, and I had to get the secret from him.
Yeah.
So which counteracted.
Yeah.
So I was like, okay, I'll just kill him. That gave me an excuse to swap out Scry Secrets. I was like, okay, get somebody far enough down the board with my 1 CP left. Mathematically, you have a 50% chance of drawing attack op that you can actually reveal
Of the remaining 6.
of the remaining 6. So it's like one of those is plant banners. If you have somebody far enough downfield, you just make them your banner carrier. You drop your banner for free if you can get them far enough, and that's 2 more VP.
Yeah.
So which I was barely able to reach that, but I mean, that was like the icing on the cake for me. It was
Sure.
like, all right, cool, max out the attack ops because
Right.
the one did nothing for me. But
Yeah, and my remaining plasma, obviously, if I was trying to try hard for points, I wouldn't have just pushed him out into the middle of nowhere where he could also fight me. But Nurgle isn't going to stand down, so
Yeah,
he pushed
right,
that and,
right.
and missed completely.
good. Well, Chaos Gods decided
Yeah.
today who wins this fight. But
Right.
no, it was a good fight. Like I said, at least it wasn't like immediately like a
Yeah,
it ended drastically. There was a big score difference, but it started good. It started with no drastic okay, that decided the game. So,
I killed some stuff.
you did,
I
yeah.
did.
I mean,
I
at
felt-
the end of the game, I had the 3 sorcerers left. No, yes, I had 3. But
Yeah,
the one, my leader was super injured,
2.
so it's he didn't do too much.
Yeah, unit-wise, it wasn't too far off. It was
Yeah.
just I couldn't put them in the right spot
Right.
and do enough damage. So.
Right. And that was my whole thing too. Zangors were pretty much just there. They actually lasted a lot longer than I thought they would. Typically, I don't expect them to do too much, but they were able to hold an objective. Actually, my champion did a great job. I got him to do a double fight. Took out one of your guys, did some damage before he died. Totally happy with that trade.
I expected that
Yeah.
to happen.
Yeah, I figure at that point you kind of needed to get on the point, so it's like
Yeah, I had to throw bodies on there.
Yeah.
I expected them to get shot off, but
for sure.
it was a priority then. So.
But overall, it was a good game.
Yeah.
Yeah, happy with how it went. I think too for bringing Compendium Team this far into Kill Team's history, these guys obviously they don't have their specific team yet. But as far as the Compendium Team goes, they're quite good.
They're not.
And-
They're not terrible.
They're not. Yeah,
They do lack some options to
They
like
do.
different things.
it's true.
The double fight on them is horrid when
Mm.
they're fighting is not very good. But that is what it is, and I'm excited to see if they get an upgrade in the future and what it'll look like.
For sure.
Because I think they're fun to play. So yeah.
And in this game, this battle report has come after the Warp Coven buff, which was very useful. I mean, I was able to double shoot the Soul Reaper cannon. Normally, you wouldn't be able to do that before the buff, which of course I'm very happy with. But yeah, that being said, it's a good game. So.
good game.
All right, anyway, thank you guys for watching. If you made it this far, we really appreciate it. We're trying to get a lot more content out soon. We'd like to thank the other members of Six-Sided Legion for being around, helping out with all the tech stuff. So hopefully you're going to be seeing a lot more of us soon. We should have a video about GW official tournaments coming out soon.
If not
So,
already out
If
before
not
this one
already
comes
out.
out. So,
Who knows? So,
because we were at the Chicago Open.
yes.
So.
And then hopefully coming up in a soon-to-be recorded battle report, we'll be seeing some arguably better Nurgle boys.
Right.
So,
Yes.
some
The
other
Ghouler
stuff coming.
Pox.
That's right,
Yes.
Ghouler Pox. So,
We'll see.
be seeing some new stuff coming soon. So, thanks again. Appreciate it. Make sure you guys like, subscribe, comment, all that good stuff. So, appreciate it. Peace.